Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Thursday. It's January 9th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and this is going to wrap it up for the week. No chart lessons on Friday, so it's hard to believe we've already got the first week under our belt for the new year, but it's come and gone already. So just like the holidays did, it's come and gone. But anyway, um, another range day today. The thing about this day, even though it's a range day, and I generally love range days because they're so predictable, but this was not an easy range day because what's happening is your support area is at different spots all day long. Notice how they're lower spots and lower, and then they're higher and higher, and so the range is you don't have the consistent turn. You know, when you got a line like this across here, and every time prices touch it, it turns. It becomes real simple then. But when it starts getting higher and higher and lower, you can't just blindly trade a failed breakout. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I got at least 3 or 4 emails a day where people struggled with this day because they've got their support lines all in different places and they're all in the wrong places. This is basically started out as a two-tiered channel the way I have it labeled here. And early on, and really what we're doing is we're starting off with the original range, which is this right here. And you can see that very clearly. And then we had a little break lower there. That's a break lower, and I had some people using that as their lows. Well, this is your trading range. Look at that support across there. So it turns out that's a midline. So but when we drop below there, the next time we come down there, that's not your support line. You want to see it prices bounce there over and over. And you see we came down, we bounced a couple of times, but somebody thought they had their support line up here. And of course, yeah, we bounced there, but just momentarily before we went lower. That's why you really need to wait. Basically, what I did was took the original range, and then once I knew we were going lower, because we'd already broken through there, if we keep heading down, then you want to get your measured move, which is right there, and that's where we ended up going for most of the day until later we even dropped below that. So you don't want to just blindly buy this, and you don't want to just buy the first bar that bounces. Um, there's a few rare cases like right here. This is a repeat pattern. Look how far and long we've been away from the EMA. But I'll talk about this some more. But that was a good setup right there, and then another good signal bar, and then a third one. But notice right here, you had the same thing. You have a trend coming down, you break, and you get 2 legs down. You got a trend coming down, you get a break and 2 legs down. So that's like a little repeat pattern right there. This one is real close. You could argue for it to be blue, to be such a bullish bar that far away. But there were 2 previous ones, and if you bought either one of them, you got fooled. So the safe play is to wait on a higher low. You don't get one here, unfortunately. But generally, you'll want, up here, you'll see we got a few lower highs. I marked this one. It's not a lower high. It's an actual high, and I'll explain that when we get there and why I like that one. And this one is real close. You could almost argue for it to be blue as well. Um, but anyway, we'll talk about the trades, but just make sure you understand that if it's a range, you want to see it bounce every time right along this line before you start buying just any pullback to that line. Because here we went lower, and then we went even lower than that, and here we finally made a higher low, and that's where you would want to buy. Here we went higher multiple times before you finally got a setup. Here you made a high, and then you had a lower high, and you see here you had a low. You don't get a higher low till way up here, and then you don't really want to buy those, in my opinion. This one's a possibility right here, but you probably would have got burned on it as well. So you basically move right back to the midline here, and this is where you don't really want to be buying in the middle, buying or selling in the middle. I did mark this one here because we had a little lower high and a little bit of a trap there, and this trend line had played out. But generally, that's the ones you want to avoid, are the ones in the middle, because that's where you could swing either way. This just becomes a support resistance, and it acts as both resistance at times and support at times. What you want to do on the range days, you want to sell the highs and you want to buy the lows. But if it's not a consistent spot you're turning every time, you got to wait on a higher low off the lows and a lower high off the highs. So I hope that's clear. But let's back out and we'll talk about the trades. And you had to be real patient this morning because you had to sit here until really 9 o'clock before you had a really good setup. So that's just the way it goes sometimes. And there's a possibility of some other trades in here that I didn't mark, and there's a couple of green ones, but really 7 o'clock came right on this little bounce here. And notice you had a little double bottom and a little failed break lower, but here you've already had a failed break lower, and so you really need a higher low here. And you don't get one till up here, and you don't really get a good setup bar. So you might buy this one just basically because that's a double bottom. Even though you went one tick lower, it's still a double bottom. And you could maybe look at that. Guaranteed they probably trapped some shorts right there. But you notice how it didn't really rock it back off, so it didn't fool a whole lot of people. And then finally you had a failed second entry short here. I marked it green because the highs are really not clear. What you want to do is get where you get the most touches. And this is where I ended up having mine later in the day, right across here. But early on, you might have had it a little lower here. And that becomes a problem for that one. Plus, there's a little bit of congestion, but you tried to go lower twice, and you had this failed break lower, and this is an uptrend. So we may push on through there. And so if you can get in this trade right here with enough room, so what you might let happen is when this breaks higher, drop a limit order and see if you can get a little better entry right there. That's where I had that. And then we just kind of chopping around. You get a lower high right here off of this, so you might expect another leg down, but you don't get a real good setup. And you get another lower high here, but it's right into a lot of support across there. So again, I don't like it. We finally bounce, but you don't get a higher low until here. And notice that's a really nice bullish bar. So I like going long. And this is a big bar, so you may let it break higher and drop a limit order in. Wouldn't matter. It works either way. But that's a good example of you don't take this first entry right here. You wait on a higher low, and this one just didn't come till it came back down to that level again. And then you get a reversal here. Notice that low, first entry, second entry. Of course, you got to be careful on these failures in here too. But if we break higher right there, we're probably headed to the other side. And that's exactly what happens. This turns out to be a nice trade here. It's a little aggressive though, so it is marked green. By here, you're getting too close to the highs. Now just simply wait on a lower high. You had one right here, but there's too many dojis in there. But when it tries to go higher again and gives you a quick 3 times to go higher, being that far away from the EMA, if it breaks lower, it's probably going to drop on down, and it does. But you also had, once you got back inside the range high there, you got a little double test and a second entry short. Notice that low, first entry, second entry. And you would think we were going on down there. Still is a nice trade, but it doesn't work out like I really thought we'd go all the way down. But we didn't. But it bounces, comes back. And that's why this was a hard range day, because it's just not really acting like a typical range, turning down at the same place and turning up at the same place. Still a range day, but it's just a kind of an awkward range day. And of course we move up, and again, you're looking for shorts up here. And you finally get a lower high right here and a nice bearish bar. Go short. If you caught that one trade, that's the trade of the day right there. Either this one or this one. And you're, you know, and I'm going to try to get a runner up here and down here if you get a good setup. And this thing just drops straight down. And then this is that repeat pattern. Normally you want to wait on a higher low, and that's part of the reason I made this one green, because look how good that looks right there. It looks like you got a double test and all, although you did drop on down a little lower than you did here. So you got a lower, you didn't bounce at the same place. You bounced a little lower. And then didn't go very far. It drops down again. You got looks like a failed breakout maybe, but then it drops down again. So this is why you need more evidence that it's probably going higher when you're not bouncing at the same spot every single time. So, and this is a repeat pattern of this right here where we get the break and 2 legs, break and 2 legs, and then it takes off. So if you notice that, especially being away from the EMA that long and being that far away. Once it does start back, this is probably going to be a great trade, and you may catch the low of the day. And obviously, this does turn out to be the low of the day because it only goes higher from there. And so if you catch this trade or this trade, that's all you needed for the day. But notice that trend working up, and you actually get a failed second entry short there. That one's real tempting, but that's such a big bar, and it's right in the middle. And you've already had your break here. So that's a problem on this trend line. Yeah, you may get a flatter trend line, but you may not. And so I don't like going long there for that reason. And then it makes another higher low right there. But again, you don't get a setup. And then suddenly it makes a lower high. And look at this big, huge bar right here. Obviously, that bar is way too big to trade. So what I would have done was when it broke lower here, drop a limit order where that is and see if it'd come back and get you, especially when it's trading down here. You really can't enter this trade way down here because you don't have enough room to get out before. Of course, your lows are way down here, so you might consider that, but that's just a huge bar, and you got to have a huge stop. And when it makes this double bottom here, I would have liked to have gone long, but you don't get a very good setup bar. So you finally get a higher low here, and it breaks lower and turns up and gives you a nice bullish bar. So if it breaks above there, it's probably going higher, although you still have to be concerned here because you're in the middle and there's resistance across there that I do not have marked. So that's a concern, and that's why I made that one green. Although we're probably going higher here because you're making higher lows. You made a higher double bottom here, and then another higher low. But that's some resistance to be worried about, and this is right in the middle of the range. So, but once we closed on the other side here with a big strong bar like that, if it breaks higher, we're probably at least going back to the original range high. And then this one was tempting, but you got to go long right into the original range high. And you see how it struggled there. It did push on through, but you can't risk that. Then it runs up, and I did like this one because you got those three matching highs, and it breaks higher and then closes. Look how far we are away from the EMA. This is basically an overshoot here as well. You might even argue that this is way down here like so. But generally it'll be off this other side of these closes here like that right there, and you can see that kind of fits there, and it fits everywhere up here except for the little bit of the overshoot. So you may take that trade without waiting on the lower high. And that's the reason, because it's such a good signal bar. It's like a trap way away from the EMA. You'd be surprised how many people would go long right there. And that's the worst thing you can do. Let it break higher and you'll probably get a chance to ride it back to the EMA. And that's what happened. And that took us into the 2 o'clock hour. So this was not an easy day, even though generally range days are fairly simple. And obviously a bunch of you listened to what I said yesterday about how to trade this. You want to buy the lows and sell the highs, which some of you tried to do, but you got to make sure you're reading this properly. You want to see prices bouncing at these levels multiple times, and if it goes a little lower, then you probably want to wait on. If you're making a new low, like right here, or right here, and then right here, and then right here, you probably want to wait on a higher low. And the same thing off the top. If you're making a new high, you probably want to wait on a lower high, because otherwise you're just guessing that it's going to reverse there, because it won't always do it. Just like it proved right here, it looked like it was going to reverse 2 prior times before it actually did. And so that's a concern. And they're just fooling you. You know, the worst thing you can try to do is pick tops and bottoms. Of course, on a range day, it's easier to pick a top and bottom, but you still probably want to wait on the higher low off the lows and the lower high off the highs. Otherwise, you're taking a chance, and you're probably going to get some failures. A lot of them will probably work still, but you'll probably have some losers too. So, I mean, if it's one little bitty 2 or 3 tick bar down here, that might be worth risking. But if it's a big bar like this and you're going to lose a couple of points probably before it's all said and done, then wait on the higher low. You want some evidence that prices are moving up again. Same thing, you want some evidence that prices are done to the upside and are moving down again. So I hope that's clear. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again next week, start over again. So I'll see you on Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.